March, bro.
It's almost March, dude.
All the boaters start coming out to the lakes.
It's gonna get popping out there. I was even out there, dude. There's already people wakeboarding and
it gets crazy.
Swimming
but it's also, I mean, they come out because it's great fishing too, right?
Yeah. I mean, as far as that, it's warming up. It's getting good. March is probably one of my favorite months. One of the best months to catch a big one.
Catch giants.
You know, you got a couple different things going on. What are we going to talk about today?
Let's stick with the non-bed fishing, right?
Right.
I think it's pretty simple. Like catching fish off a bed, it can be difficult, but it's usually pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
Like if they're locked, you're going to catch a bed fish.
Exactly.
So let's talk about how to catch those fish that aren't locked, that are staging still, or maybe freshly post-spawn, maybe. I mean, you still got some of those mixed in too. But the majority of March are going to be pre-spawn or spawning. So let's talk about some search baits, how we're finding those fish, how we're targeting those fish.
Yeah, my first one, I mean, I'm starting off with an old square bill. This is the Crush series from 6 Cents. They got the 50 and the 100 size. Usually, honestly, I'm sticking with that 50. Big ones eat it, small ones eat it. Beginning of the month, I'm still staying with my reds, my crawdad patterns. You know, still keep those shad patterns in the boat, though. This is just my chuck and wind. Put the trolling motor down first thing in the morning. Go just try to find some fish. You know, it's covering that 3 to 5 foot depth range, going back into those creek arms a little farther, getting more on top of those flats. Yeah, it's just a super simple chuck and wind. These things are weedless to a point. For a hard bait with that square bill on there, it's going to deflect off all the cover.
They get through cover pretty well.
Yeah, you can kind of just worm this thing through some brush. Super simple, chuck and wind in a square bill down the bank. Super fun. Freaking catches all sizes too.
Yeah, I mean, you can run into some freaking big ones. You can run into numbers.
Yeah.
It's a fun bait to throw.
Yeah, it helps you kind of find them too, you know, and then find a little group of them, then you can kind of slow down, pick that area apart a little more. First thing, you can go chuck that crank around.
Well, speaking of picking that area apart, I got a bait that is probably the #1 bait in March to pick areas apart with when these fish are finicky. They're up thinking about spawning. You know, guys, if females aren't on a bed locked, right, they can be pretty finicky and pretty tough to deal with and pretty tough to catch. So there's one bait that sticks out like a sore thumb that always does well this time of year, and that's the Senko or the 6 Cents Clout. I mean, either or, it doesn't matter. It gets bit. All right, and there's a lot of different ways to throw these. My personal favorite way, if you notice here, I got some bigger ones, some 6-inch ones. I personally like those bigger ones. I can get a lot farther cast, a lot more accurate cast, and I can skip them a little bit better on a bait caster than I can a 5-incher because they're a little bit heavier. So if I'm skipping underneath some brush or what have you, definitely one of my all-time go-tos. I think anybody's go-to in the springtime for, you know, close to spawning fish. I mean,
it's hard to beat.
Catches a lot of big fish, catches a lot of fish just in general. Wacky rig 'em, Nico rig 'em, Texas rig 'em, but specifically today I want to talk to you guys about Texas rigging them. And what I like to do on the 6-inch Senkos is I'm throwing a 5/0 jungle flipping hook, and there's a reason for that, guys. I learned this in Texas, but you know, a lot of guys throw an EWG or straight shank, right? I think we were literally just talking about it. You're like jungle flipping hook. I was like, well, the reason for that, guys, is that hook point is there's so much hook point exposed, so much gap on that flipping hook where you don't have the eyelet close to that hook point at all on a flipping hook. You got all that space in between there. And so when you get those finicky females, they come up and they just carry it off, right? And it may not have it all the way in their mouth. The hookup ratio on this is way better. And I tend to stick more and keep them pinned a lot better on the flipping hook than I do a regular EWG or straight shank or anything like that. Still very, very weedless. I actually don't poke that hook point all the way through. So I'm not technically Texas rigging it. I'm just sticking it through because that Senko's soft enough. I set the hook, it's coming through. So it keeps it really weedless. And then I've got, like I said, a lot of hook point, hook those fish. Staple around here, rig it different ways, guys. But I definitely seem to get bit with bigger fish on the 6-inch earlier in the spawn. Early to mid-March. And then, probably once they really get on beds, you get that big wave around a full moon or whatever. A wacky rig, 5-inch, is hard to beat. It's a little bit more finessey with those fish that you're blind bed fishing. But they're a little bit more aggressive in that pre-spawn stage. And that's what I like to do with these guys when those females are cruising those banks. Hard to beat that.
I got a nice little follow-up to that, the bigger Senko. Man, it's the flick
Speaking
shake.
about finessey.
I know,
Yeah.
a little sneaky, bro. People sleep on this one. But flick shake, wacky jig head. But basically, if you haven't thrown it before, you're throwing a wacky rig, but on the hook, they have the weighted jig head on there. What that allows you to do, especially, I like wacky rigging some of these finesse worms like a robo worm.
You got a robo worm. So I don't think people normally think wacky rig robo worm.
No, and like, you know, weightless, you're not gonna be able to cast this thing. You get a little flick shake though. I like staying, if you can stay with the lightest size, the 16th, the 32nd, I really feel like the slower fall is kind of the key to it. They do got some heavier sizes if you need it, if it's windy, something like that. I mean, just cast.
Spinning rod?
Spinning rod. You know, I like throwing it on a medium light. And then I like staying with the smaller profile worms than the Senko. It's something a little different, especially if they're finicky.
I don't think a lot of people do that.
Yeah, it's super fun. You know, if they're early in the pre-spawn stage, you can get a little bigger one and fish that wacky rig, you know, 12, 15 feet. They're not seeing that deep a lot. Yeah, it's a fun one. And then even if you're beating the bank too, it allows you a little more effective. It's a little faster sink than if you're throwing like a weightless wacky Senko. Super fun one. Finesse gear, you know, 8 to 12 pound line, depending on where you're at, caliber of fish you're going for. They do have the power version too, so if you do want to throw it by some cover, grass, wood, it's got a little stouter hook on there, so you can beef up your combo.
Itchy.
The power itchy, bro. It's not really powerful.
Right. It's a thicker hook shake. It helps out, you know.
Yeah, helps you out. You can get a little beefier line if you're worried about it. I mean, literally just letting this thing slink. It can be kind of boring at times. Rip it up and just let it fall. Rip it up.
I can get you some freaking big bites,
Yeah, I've got
too.
some big ones.
He's got some big ones.
Swirl out here, freaking.
You're throwing out some juice over here, bro.
Yeah.
Got the robo worm wacky rig.
Sleeper. Oxbloods. That red crawler's killer right now in the spring. Super simple, fun way. Pond guys don't sleep on it. Some river guys don't sleep on it. It's a good way.
First time I ever saw that was at a pond guy, and he was smashing them on it.
Dude, it's a little sleeper. Everyone's wacky rigging a Senko, a little thinner profile, and I mean it quivers. That little robo tail on there, it looks super good. But that's my finesse one.
All right.
That's my finessey.
Oh, I'm not getting super finessey today, but
oh shoot, my favorite.
we're going power fishing.
Heck yeah.
All right, we're going braid, jungle. Right, I'm trying to find those hard to reach, you know, pre-spawn spawning fish. And guys, this is the time to bust out the frog. Okay, a lot of guys wait till April to bust out the frog, but those that know, you know, bust it out in March, late February, March. You will start to get some big fish that are up there sunbathing, incubating those eggs. Now, I will say this, it's typically, you can get a lot of missed fish on this. But what that does for you guys is it shows you where those fish are at. And that's when you back it up with the Senko, the robo, and you slow down around that fish because that fish is there. It locates them. You will obviously still get some big eats. I've had some great freaking frog days in early March. I mean, phenomenal. Nobody's really doing it, and it's something that stays over that area that they're not super happy with it being on. It stays in that section for a while, and they can't help but come up and eat it over beds. Pre-spawn fish that are hunting the bank, looking for males to pair up with. That is a no-brainer right there. You guys got to try the frog, specifically the hush frog from 6 Cents. A reason I like this slender style body type, another good one is the Spro Poppin' Frog. I stick with those slender profiles early in the spawn because typically they're they're not super aggressive on it yet. So that slender body allows to get those hooks a lot better in their mouth when they just come up and nip on the back end, and I have a little bit better hookup ratio on those than I do like a regular bronzeye or a regular, VEGA or whatever, whatever you're throwing. So stick with those guys, stick with that poppin' frog early from Spro, or that hush frog, which is my favorite. And typically I'm going white. Early white, 9 times out of 10. They're keyed in more on shad. Bluegill haven't come up there yet, starting to messing with their eggs in their beds. I will later on in the spawn, late March, definitely through April. I'm throwing mainly bluegill patterns on the frogs because that's, something that they're really pissed off about around their beds. So guys, check it out. Got to throw the frog around. And you got something similar up there in that shallow section that is hunting them down. What you
Talk
got?
about the old swim baits.
Old swimmers.
More soft body, boot tail. You know, time put those HUDs away, those more wedge tail, slower style. We're picking up the boot tail a little faster. But yeah, I got two different ones here. This is the CULLSHAD from BERKLEY. This one is your harness style, so it's got the bottom treble hook on there. Again, kind of like with the square bill, it's just super simple fishing for me right now. I'm chucking and winding a lot. You know, if you got a little more sparse cover, or fishing it shallow over treetops and stuff, that's where I really like the CULLSHAD with that bottom hook. It's gonna stay higher in the water column. If I do want to get it deeper or skipping around, we're skipping that frog, heavier cover, I'll go with something like the whale with a, you know, beast style hook, belly weighted swim bait hook. Yeah, even another little sleeper with this one right now, if they're still earlier in that pre-spawn, is kind of helicoptering it, reeling it, and just letting it fall, reeling it up. You know, especially if you're bringing it over big boulders and stuff, that's a killer way to catch them right now. You know, I think a lot of people think you got to cast and just be burning and winding and, you know, fishing it fast, but almost kind of like worming it like you would a jig or something. Big old swim bait right now is just deadly. Whether it's over rocks, through the brush, you know, it's a fun way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, chunk and
you get some big bites that way.
Yep. But yeah, that's just another one. Super simple. Targeting, you know, those higher class fish with that swim bait.
Absolutely.
I know Seth's got another swim bait, a little different style.
I got a question for the viewers though.
What you got?
I'm curious, you guys, what is your biggest bedfish you've ever caught? What's your biggest bedfish you ever caught?
Mine's the 870 something.
We're at
Sag.
Yep.
That was my first 8-pounder.
Heck yeah.
Bed fishing. Freaking.
That's a freaking big one.
It was a fun one, dude.
I went out at Roosevelt 1041 in a dirt. I think that's my biggest bedfish. Worked on bigger ones, but you know how that goes sometimes.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work out.
Yep.
I got something, you guys. If you do not have a glide bait on your deck in the springtime, you're doing something wrong. I can't tell you how many bedfish I've located with a glide. Not that they've eaten it, but that I've seen them come and show themselves. You follow that fish back and you find out that bed that you missed or that you couldn't see, and that you would have just passed right by. And usually it draws out the big girls. I mean, you know, there's a reason it's called the draw. It draws them. It's one of those things, and I'm sticking with mainly some type of like carp looking pattern. And you know, in March, a lot of times those carp are one of the things they just hate swimming around their beds. And they'll eat baby carp too. But for some reason, that goldish, that brownish carp color around the springtime, it draws those females that are thinking about or on a bed locked, or thinking about, you know, being on a bed with a male, draws those big ones out. They chase it off. All right. If you guys watch closely at any of your lakes, you know, Roosevelt, Saguaro, if you guys pay close attention, gizzard, shad, and carp are two things they get probably more angry with than bluegill. They'll come up, and a bluegill they can just, you know, chomp and, you know, say peace, you're out of here. But a carp and a gizzard, a little bit bigger profile, they get really aggressive on them, and they chase them far off their bed, and then they'll come back. And that's what I'm searching for with this, guys. Got to have it on your deck. I'm throwing this around a lot of times when I'm like, okay, are there spawning fish up? Do I not know, you know, what stage are these fish in, right? And so I'm searching a lot of times, and you'll get surprise eats on it too. You know, you'll get a big one come up and eat it. But a lot of times I'm looking for those follows, and that's when I'll follow up Senkos, you know, wacky robo worm, craw, whatever it may be, and I can locate where that fish came from. But you guys got to throw a glide bait this time of year. It's a great locator, and we'll get you some big eats.
Yeah.
That about does it, but we got something for the viewers, guys. This is pretty cool. We're going to throw these together in packages. If you guys want to buy the March package, we're going to have all these baits in a special package for you guys. Pretty cool. Something we thought about, actually suggested by a customer.
Yeah.
Throw those in there, and we'll have one of each thing that we have here in the video talked about. And you guys can purchase package. We'll list a price down there. Everything included will be listed, and you guys can order it from Copperstate Tackle.
Yeah, super cool. Make it super easy for you guys.
Easy peasy. Go get all the March baits that we love to throw, and we've got big ones on.
Yep.
Heck yeah.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks, guys. We're out.
Peace.